everybody, lovely to see you again. We're here together for the next instalment of There's a Werewolf in My Tent. However, before we get started, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to those people who have been commenting on our Facebook page. It's really lovely to see what you've been up to, and I've been particularly impressed with people's handwriting. Well done. So, where did we get to? Our next chapter, the meat thing. As soon as we were in the woods, Jodie shouted, "Switch!" And that meant it was someone else's turn to give Maisie a piggyback because Jodie was getting tired. So Zac took Maisie and Jodie took the bag and level 11 supplies, and we ran through the woods until we found somewhere for the secret meeting. Eventually, Zac spotted a good place with a really big tree that looked good for sitting behind and keeping a lookout to make sure that no one tried to sneak up on us. We quickly unpacked the backpack and covered Maisie in insect repellent so that we could have a secret meeting. As soon as the meeting had officially begun, Zac's eyes were huge. Jodie said, "What is it? What's going on?" Zac gulped a bit and said, "Izzy, did the howling you heard sound a bit, human?" I didn't really know what Zac meant, but then he did a little howl noise and I realised that the howling had sounded a bit human. Then Jodie said, "It wasn't howling, Izzy, you heard, it was the wind." But I ignored Jodie because I knew that it wasn't the wind that I'd heard, and also because Zac was shaking his head really slowly, backwards and forwards. I could see by the look in Zac's eyes that he knew what had made the howling noise and that it was bad. That's when Zac said, "I have to tell you, there is danger amongst us." Jodie rolling her eyes because Zac was doing that thing he does when he makes everything sound like a film, and he won't just talk like a normal person. And then he said, "There's a werewolf in the camp." Maisie gasped, and grabbed my hand so hard that I yelped. Then Zac started talking about weird tree scratches and how they had obviously been made by the wild beast. And he said that he couldn't stop thinking about the giant poo and that it had definitely looked a bit werewolfy. And Maisie nodded loads. Then Zac said, "And there's the meat thing." Jodie looked at me and I looked at Jodie because we both obviously had no idea what the meat thing was. So that's when Zac explained that someone amongst us was obsessed with eating meat, and that was a clear sign that they were a wild beast. Maisie gasped and whispered, "Miss Moon." And Zac nodded and said, "It explains her super strength." Then Maisie took 5 deep breaths and said, "Miss Moon has really long nails. Maybe they're claws?" Zac's eyes went wide, and he said that he thought Maisie was 100% correct about the claws. And that's when I remembered that Miss Moon had actually accidentally scratched Jodie when she had snatched the hammer out of her hand when they were putting up the tent. Zac said that we also had to seriously consider how tall Miss Moon was because he did not think it was normal for a lady to be as tall as Miss Moon. Zac explained that werewolves are not like regular wolves because they are shapeshifters. Zac said that when werewolves go into human form, they could be much taller than anyone else because it would be like a huge wolf standing on its hind legs. Then Jodie said that explained why Miss Moon had known all the stuff about the last wolf in Scotland. Zac said that he had suspected there was a werewolf amongst us the second I had told him about the late night howling, but that it was really when he saw Miss Moon's hairy legs during the Hot Chocolate River game that he knew for sure. Did any of you have fun playing the Hot Chocolate River game? I'd love to know about it if you did. And that's when we all looked at each other, and Maisie put her head in her hands and said, "No, no, no, not again, no, no, no." And we all knew we had a serious problem. Our PE teacher was a werewolf. Next chapter, werewolf. I couldn't believe that this was happening to us. I mean, we were living in a tent in the middle of the woods and there was a werewolf. Jodie was tapping her hands against her legs loads because that's what she does sometimes when she's a bit nervous. And then she said, "Zach, are we in danger?" Zach took a deep breath and said that we were probably okay for now because Miss Moon was still in human form, but that since she started howling in the night and growing hairy legs, that it was probably just a matter of time before she fully transformed. Jodie started tapping her legs loads when Zach said that, and Maisie was looking a bit swirly. So that's when I took the pen and pad out of my jacket and started writing down everything that we knew about werewolves, so we could make a plan about what to do next so we didn't get eaten alive. Zach said that he was basically a werewolf expert, which I was really pleased about because there wasn't a library at the campsite and phones and other devices were banned, so we couldn't do research on the internet. So we did the list using Zach's brain. What we know about werewolves. Number 1, werewolves are in human form most of the time. Number 2, a full moon makes them transform into wolf form. Number 3, they are tall. Number 4, might have a long nose like a dog, wolf, when in human form. Number 5, they are obsessed with meat. Number 6, they have super strength. Number 7, they have long nails or claws. And number 8, totally hairy. Maybe you could create a list of things that you're an expert on, just like Zach's done. Maybe you could pick a subject and then you could write all the things you know about that particular thing. And then maybe you could add some research that you've carried out afterwards and create a little fact file about something that you're really interested in. And again, post them on our Facebook page because I would love to see them. Then Zach said that was all he knew and that he was sorry that he didn't know any more. Then Maisie said, "I might have broken the rules." And she said it in such a tiny voice that I wasn't sure if I just imagined it or not until she reached into her pocket and pulled out her mobile phone. Maisie made us all pinky promise that we wouldn't tell Miss Jones about her phone because she didn't want to be expelled. She said that she'd sneaked her phone along with her on the trip because she was worried that a snake or even a bear might get into our tent and that she might need to call 999. But Maisie said she didn't have any signal because of the wilderness. Zach said that if maybe we could get just a little bit of signal, we could call the library and get them to read it to us over the phone. But Jodie said she wasn't sure that they did that. But Maisie said that they definitely would because we all have library cards. But we couldn't get any phone signal at all, even when Zach pointed the phone at his own head because he heard that your brainwaves can give your phone a signal. Then Zach started waving the phone around until he shouted, "I've got 2 bars!" So we made Zach stand completely still and try to decide what to do next because we didn't actually know the number for the library. So that's when we decided that we would text our friend Amy, who wasn't on our trip because of her tonsils, and ask her to look up stuff about werewolves and to text it to us. We couldn't decide what to say in the text until Zach said, "Hurry up, it's gone down to 1 bar." So we just quickly sent, "Amy, you need to text us everything about werewolves ASAP. PS, sorry about both of your tonsils. Kiss, kiss, kiss." But as soon as we pressed send, we lost the signal. So we couldn't be sure if Amy got it or not. And then Maisie said that once she'd read a poem about the werewolf and that it had said that werewolves were sad creatures who didn't really like being werewolves, and also they were loners, and that she started to feel really bad for Miss Moon. So we added loner and sad creature to the list. What are they doing here? But then Jodie said that Miss Moon didn't seem very sad or lonely and that she just seemed annoyed all the time. And that's when we heard a noise, a rustling. Then twigs started cracking. Maisie gasped, so I put my hand over her mouth and stood with my back against the tree, and Zach and Jodie hit the floor, just like Jodie had trained us to do. I could hear the noise getting closer and closer, and Maisie went limp, so I knew that she'd fainted. So I slowly slid down the tree until we were both lying on the ground next to Jodie and Zach, and that's when we all saw it. It was Miss Moon, and she was running through the forest. Oh, there she is. She was running so fast that at first I thought she was So she was running so fast that at first I thought there might be something in the woods chasing her. And then I saw that she was grinning, and she was even laughing a little bit, even though there was no one there to make her laugh or anything like that, because she was all alone. We all held our breath as Miss Moon ran past us. I looked at Maisie because I was hoping that she was still unconscious, but she wasn't. Her eyes were wide open and frozen in fear. We all lay completely still and didn't say a word until we couldn't see or hear Miss Moon any more. The missing sausages. On our way back to the campsite, Zach said that Miss Moon must love running free in the forest because she's a wild animal. He said that we should probably have followed her, and that if we had, we might have seen her scratching her claws against the trees. As soon as we were out of the woods, I smelled the barbecue, and I gasped, and I said, "Oh, it's the meat! She must have smelled the meat! That's why she was smiling and running so fast." Maisie agreed with me loads because she said that dogs have a heightened sense of smell, which means they can probably smell a cheeseburger from a mile away, and that wolves and dogs were sort of the same thing. So we all hurried up to the campsite because we wanted to see if Miss Moon was feasting. And also because we were really hungry and the barbecue smelled so good. When we got there, Miss Jones was cooking and Miss Moon was first in line with her paper plate waiting for a burger. Miss Moon's face was bright red from all the running, and it even looked a bit like she was drooling. We joined the back of the queue and watched Miss Moon closely as she asked for 3 burgers. 3! She didn't even take a bun. She just sat down and ate all 3 burgers on her own, really fast. When we got to the front of the queue, I wasn't really that hungry for burgers anymore because it was all a bit disgusting watching Miss Moon scoff them like that. So I asked for a sausage instead of a burger, and that's when Miss Jones said that the sausages were missing. Miss Jones let me have the halloumi cheese and tomato kebab and a cheese roll, just like Jodie was having, because Jodie is a vegetarian. By the time we sat down, Miss Moon had finished her meat feast and was going up for seconds. That's when Jodie said she definitely is obsessed with meat. And we all said that she definitely was. Then we heard Miss Jones asking Miss Moon where she had been and if she knew where the missing sausages were. We all leaned in as close as we could, and my food nearly tipped off my plate because I was leaning forward so much. That's when Miss Moon's face went even more red, and she got a little bit flustered, and she said, well, I'm sure they'll be in one of these cool boxes somewhere." But she didn't even look for them. She just grabbed another burger off the barbecue with her bare hands and then wandered off with it. That's when Zach said, "She knows fine well the sausages are gone. If they were here, she'd be able to smell them a mile away. She's obviously stolen them and is eating them raw. That's probably what she was doing in the woods." And we all knew Zach was right. Just then we heard a beeping coming from Maisie, and Zach said, "Amy, she must have got our text." So Maisie took out her phone and her face went completely pale. And that's because Amy had text back. "Werewolves are humans who transform into wolf-like creatures during a full moon. Folklore has it that some werewolves can often transform when they are angry. A werewolf is likely to become increasingly hairy prior to a full moon. Look out for the meeting of eyebrows, the so-called monobrow. We'll send more later. What is going on there?" There's Amy's message. That night, Zach said that it was time to take action, and that meant we had to put our spending money together and buy loads of meat. Zach said that if we hid meat under Miss Moon's tent, then then she would go wild trying to find it, and that she might even get so angry that she'd transform, and we could take a video on Maisie's phone as evidence. Zach said that if we caught Miss Moon in werewolf form, we could show it to Miss Jones, and she would show it to the police, and Miss Moon would get taken away and put in a werewolf cage, and we would be safe. But then Maisie started crying because she said it was not nice to keep a human werewolf in a cage, and that she still felt really sad about Miss Moon and her werewolf disease. I hadn't thought about werewolfism being a disease before, and I started to feel a bit bad about the cage thing too. But then Zach told Maisie that it was okay and for her own good, because if she ate one of her pupils on a full moon, she would probably feel terrible, and she'd also get sent to prison for life. And that's when Jodie said, if you're right and Miss Moon is a werewolf, we can't be sure she's a nice one. Maisie, I mean, she's not very nice when she's a person in human form. And that made Maisie gulp, and she stopped crying right away. We waited until everyone else was inside their tents getting ready for bed, and then we put our torches, and then we got our torches out so that it looked as though we'd gone to bed. And then we sat in the darkness for ages, so everyone thought we were asleep, before sneaking out and down to the campfire shop. The shop door made a beep beep sound when we opened it, and we almost jumped out of our skin because we were on a secret mission, so we were all a bit nervy. It was so bright inside the shop. Zach said hello to the shopkeeper, and he gave us a bit of a weird look, and Jodie told me to stop scrunching up my eyes so much because it was making us look suspicious, even though I was 100% sure that the reason the shopkeeper was looking at us so strangely was because Maisie was still in her spacesuit sleeping bag. We hurried to the fridge at the back of the shop and looked to see which meat we could buy with our spending money. Zach said that we should get loads of steak and bury it next to her tent, and that would drive her wild. But we didn't have enough money for loads of steak, so we bought 4 packs of 99p ham slices. When we all put our change on the counter to pay for the ham, the shopkeeper shook his head and muttered, "Teachers these days," and "it's healthy eating gone mad," and "poor souls." And then he put 4 bags of crisps and a packet of biscuits in the bag too, and said, "No charge." What a kind gentleman. I had no idea why we didn't have to pay, and Zach said that if he'd known, he would have got the steak. But Maisie said that the ham was better because there were 50 slices in each packet, which meant we had 200 slices. We sneaked back up to the camp and hid in the trees beside Miss Moon's tent. That's when Zach said, "Right, don't panic, Maisie, okay?" And as soon as Zach had said that, I just knew that he wanted us to put the ham super close to Miss Moon's tent, and that's exactly what he did, and he wanted us to do it. Zach said that if we laid the slices of ham on the roof of her tent, they would be disguised because it was dark, and Miss Jones wouldn't understand why the roof was smelling of meat, and that would make her confused and hungry and angry. Maisie said, "No way, it's too dangerous." But then Zach said that Miss Moon would be fast asleep, and that if we all helped, we could do it really quickly and then run back into the trees and watch. I thought this was a really bad idea. A really, really bad idea. Because we all knew that werewolves had heightened senses, and that Miss Moon would probably wake up drooling within seconds. But then Zach said that we had to take a big risk if we wanted to catch her on camera. So we told Maisie to wait in the trees, but she said no, and that she was too scared to be in the woods alone, so we all went. We opened each packet of ham really quietly before we reached Miss Moon's tent, and then we began laying the slices of ham on the roof so they looked like little pink roof tiles. And we did this as fast as we could and as gently as we could until the roof of the tent was completely covered. And then, just as we were sneaking away, we heard a rustling from inside the tent. So we ran. Maisie was shaking like mad by the time we got back to our hiding spot, and Zach must have been really scared too because he was trying to point Maisie's phone at Miss Moon's tent, but It was shaking all over the place. That's when Jodie said, "Give it to me!" And she held it steady and zoomed in on Miss Moon's tent. We all huddled around Jodie and stared at the screen, but nothing happened. And that's when Maisie said, "I don't understand. We used 200 slices." And Zach said, "We should have got a steak." And Jodie said, "Shh." The tent with all the ham on top. But then we heard a weird whimpering sound and Miss Moon's tent unzipped, and then we all saw Miss Moon crawl out of her tent on all fours, and there was hair everywhere, and that's when we all gasped. And Maisie fainted on top of Jodie and almost knocked her over, and the phone fell into the mud. And we ran. Eyes in the woods. It took ages to get back to our tent because we each had to carry Maisie by an arm or a leg, and she felt a lot heavier than usual because she had loads of torches and batteries and other stuff inside her sleeping bag. As soon as we were back in our tent, Jodie took out her mini padlock and locked the door zip so we were safe. We all said that Zach should definitely stay in our tent and that he could use one of Maisie's sleeping bags and sleep in the middle bit, and he said okay, and I knew that he would because he looked terrified. Jodie wiped the mud off Maisie's phone and said that it wasn't broken, so the video should still be on there. Maisie was still out in the cold, was still out cold, but I put her eye mask on her just in case she woke up while we were watching the video. That's when Jodie said, "Are you ready?" And then she pressed play before we could even answer. It was too dark to see anything, but after a few seconds we heard the whimpering and the tent unzipping, and then we all gasped. And Zach said, do you see that?" And we all nodded that we did, because we could see werewolf eyes. And Jodie said, "I don't think that person needs to worry about bringing wolves back in the wild. They're already here." Maisie didn't do or say anything for ages once we took off her eye mask and showed her the shining werewolf eyes. And then eventually she took a deep breath and said, "What's next?" But then Zach said, "Shh," because he thought he heard a noise outside. So we all froze, and Jodie turned the torch off, and Maisie grabbed my hand and squeezed it so tight it made my eyes water. We all sat in the dark, in silence, until Jodie eventually said, "Whatever it was, it's gone now." And all of a sudden Maisie's phone beeped, and we all screamed. Maisie's eyes went wide, and then she looked at the screen, and then she said, "Are you ready?" Maisie read out the message. "A bite or a scratch from a werewolf will cause the affliction to be passed on to the victim. P.S. Are you all still alive? Love, Amy. Kiss, kiss, kiss." Monobrow. We were all exhausted the next morning because none of us had managed to get any sleep, because every time someone rustled or coughed or snorted, one of us would gasp and put the torch on and make sure a werewolf hadn't sneaked into our tent. It also didn't help that Maisie was obsessed with Amy's text about being able to pass on werewolfism, and she kept touching her own arm hair and saying that it was getting longer and that it felt like werewolf fur. At breakfast, we all sat really close together on one of the picnic benches as we ate our cereal and looked around to see if Miss Moon was up yet. But Miss Moon was nowhere to be seen, and Miss Jones was being really grumpy about having to do all the teachery stuff, like countersaw and make sure that we were all wearing real clothes, which was a new rule because Gary Petrie had tried to only wear pyjama bottoms and flip-flops the day before. Then, all of a sudden, Maisie gasped, and that's when we saw Miss Moon walking straight towards us. She did not look pleased. That's when Zach started panicking, saying that she might have spotted us spying on her last night with her super sensitive werewolf eyes. But Miss Moon walked past us and went over to Miss Jones instead. We all stared at Miss Moon as she spoke to Miss Jones, but the only word we managed to hear was bacon. And then Miss Jones threw her arms in the air and said, "What do you want? I'm going to get changed." And then she stormed off, and I swear Miss Moon did a low growling sound. I could feel Maisie edging closer and closer to me on the bench as Miss Moon sat down on the other side of our picnic table. She didn't even say hello. She just sat there with her back to us, so we couldn't even see her face. And she drank her coffee in complete silence. Jodie pointed at Miss Moon's hair with a bit of a shaky finger, and we all nodded loads because her hair looked crazy, and there was no way there'd been that much of it yesterday. And then I felt Maisie begin to slip, and before I could do anything, she slid right off the bench and landed underneath the picnic table. Miss Moon slammed her coffee cup down and whipped her head around to face us and said, "What exactly is wrong with that child?" But we couldn't really answer because we were all too busy staring at her face. Her eyebrows were so hairy and they were almost touching in the middle. And Zach gasped and said, "The so-called monobrow." Miss Moon narrowed her eyes at him and said, "What did you just say?" And that's when Zach realised that he'd said it out loud. So he just said, nothing, and picked up his spoon and pretended to be eating his cereal, even though there wasn't anything left in his bowl. Miss Moon growled a tiny bit, and then she got off of her seat and crawled under the picnic table. So we followed her, and Jodie said, "She'll be fine. Come on, Maisie, out you come." Jodie started to drag Maisie out from under the picnic table, but then Miss Moon started helping, and Maisie woke up and saw Miss Moon, and she took the deepest breath a person has ever taken, and I knew exactly what was about to happen, and so did Jodie and Zach. So we dropped Maisie and covered our ears, and Maisie screamed the whole forest down. Miss Moon looked furious, and it was probably because Maisie had screamed right in her ear. Miss Moon's face went red, and that's when I remember something about werewolf transforming when it's angry. Zach had already begun to back out slowly from under the table and was pulling me with him. Then Miss Moon leapt out from under the table so fast I actually yelped, and she grabbed her coffee mug and she stormed away. We all lay down on the grass next to the table because we were in shock. Jodie said that it was time to face facts, and that Miss Moon was getting hairier by the day. I said that she was also getting more and more angry, and everyone agreed. Then Zach said, "You know what this means? It will soon be a full moon." Me and Jodie both gave Zach a look when he said that last bit, because Maisie was lying right there, and Zach did his oops face, and we do when we accidentally say stuff in front of Maisie that terrifies her to her very core. So Zach asked Maisie if she was okay, but Maisie didn't say anything, and she had her head down, so we couldn't even see her face. And when she looked up, we saw that she was crying. We all gave Maisie a hug and said that we would protect her from Miss Moon. And then Maisie said, "But who will protect Miss Moon from herself?" And that's when we realised that Maisie was crying because she was worried about Miss Moon. Then Maisie wiped her eyes and said, "We have to do something. We need to find a cure." And that's when I got a brilliant idea. Right, we're going to stop there. Our next chapter will be Werewolves in Need. I'm going to set you another task. I wonder if you can come up with some sort of potion that we could give to Miss Moon to stop her from being a werewolf. What would you put in it? What sort of things might it include? I wonder. Maybe you'd like to write it or record yourself, or maybe take some photographs of the things that you think might be in there, and maybe you could post those on the Facebook page. I'd love to know what you would give Miss Moon to cure her of her werewolfism. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Bye-bye.